Have you ever come across a book that doesn't just tell a story, but invites you to look at your own a little differently? That's exactly what Michael Byron does in his new book, The Grace Effect From Brooklyn to Boise. With over 30 years in retail leadership, Michael has been a catalyst for inclusion. He opened doors for women and minority owned businesses long before it became a trend. The Grace Effect takes us even deeper. It's a powerful look at how his upbringing, values, and belief in grace shaped the leader he is today. We'll dive into the stories behind the book, the lessons that defined him, and why leading with heart isn't optional, it's essential. I'm Laurette Rondenet, and it's an honor to welcome Michael back to the podcast. So, welcome, Michael, to Owning Your Legacy podcast, and I'm honored to have you a second time. Yay!
Yes, thank you for having me, Lorette. I'm just so appreciative of this opportunity. I had so much fun the first time. I had to come back again.
Exactly. But this time, you are now an author, which is new compared to last time.
Yeah, for me, it was really just looking back over my life and the blessings that I've had. I'm here with my mom today, and we were having a tough conversation today. And my mom worked hard, 2 jobs. We didn't have a whole lot, but I was never without anything, I mean, I've been wearing starched shirts since I was 8 years old. We had the Chinese cleaners that used to launder them and press them and fold them like new shirts, and I've been wearing a starched shirt since I was 8 years old. And so I could never remember a time without going to school or church with a crisp shirt on all the time, and so I'm still that way today, right? And
You are.
so it was really just the, humble beginnings, the many blessings, and really, the many people who have come into my life like you and others who sometimes it's hard to believe that I have as many connections and friends and colleagues and relationships as I do, but it goes back to me being a kid and, when I moved somewhere, my mom would say, "We're only been here 3 hours and now you got a best friend already."
Oh,
So
that's cute. That's awesome.
because I just sort of made myself show myself friendly. You sometimes you win friends and sometimes you win the wrong ones. The other part that I had that I was a gift from my mother was the spirit of discernment. So I realized who's not good for me. And I realized
I
how to
love
yeah,
that word
yeah.
discernment. It's hard
It's
and it's
hard it's
so
hard, but I learned it,
important.
and I had to in New York because not everyone that walked in your circle was good for you, and, people were certainly taking advantage of, adults, kids, or whoever they thought they could get a dollar from, and so you always have to be guarded how you walked and how you showed up in places, and so it was me just really trying to get the thoughts down and going back over and recanting those, when God's grace was on my life without
I
even
love the title, The Grace Effect is
that was the
beautiful.
title, that was the
You
reason
gotta
why.
show the book for yay, so good. And yeah, and the cover's beautiful. Yeah, it's
And
beautiful.
this is the Brooklyn Bridge upside down. It drops me into Boise.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I didn't even notice
and
that. That's
and
awesome.
my illustrator did that because so many people the subtitle from Brooklyn to Boise came about because I flew on the plane to Boise many, many nights, the last flight to Boise from Minneapolis or Atlanta. And very often I was always the only African American on the plane. So people would say, "Well, where you headed?" And I'm thinking, now that's an odd question given the plane's going to Boise. But I knew what they meant, like, what are you doing coming to Boise on a Thursday night at whatever? And so sometimes the conversation would stop right there while I'm just headed home or something like that. And then somebody wanted to know, well, what do you do? And you go on from there. But Lorette, I bet you I'd had that said to me in the 5 years I lived there about 100 times.
Interesting.
And
Yeah, talk a little bit more about that.
yeah,
I think that's
well,
cool.
I love my community, number one. And we happen to be the only African American family. I still remember bringing the Brooklyn Block Party to that community. It was 90 homes, all of them on a half acre to an acre and a half. So they're really spread out. We had some beautiful grounds, and we had a beautiful place where we could throw up party. But what was really profound was the job that I had. I was the only African American officer at that time in merchandising. This office was the most incredible office you would ever wanna see. It was, running on a sort of a babbling brook out of the hills, and I had, windows from the floor to the ceiling. This is a kid from Bedside, Brooklyn, mind you, right? Like, I was pinching myself, how did I get here? But I was working toward that my whole life, right? And then, I get appointed by the governor to sit on one of his, teen prevention pregnancy prevention, uh, committees, and I served 2 years for the governor. Another unique thing that happened is my wife was a high school teacher, but couldn't get an interview, for a job, and
Huh.
but she
And
be
this is Boise
yeah,
and is
but she became the, education policy advisor for the state hired by the governor. So
wow.
God's grace, one of our senior vice presidents at Albertsons at the time, she was in charge of public affairs and community relations, so she saw the governor all the time. And what she said to the governor is that, "I've met a lot of people on your staff, but there's no one of color." And he said, "Oh, I've been working on that and, and da 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 da." And he said, "I got an open position. I really love to fill the education policy advisor." And this young woman called me that day. I was in California traveling and said, "You have to get your wife's resume to me now." So I'm calling my wife, who is still moving from from California to Idaho. Anyway, long and short of it, 3, 4 weeks went by, he interviewed her himself, and he hired her, and so she stayed in that job for 4 years, and some of the same people in the, district who she was trying to get an interview with now had to come through her to get to the governor.
Ah,
And
it's
so,
karma. It's karma.
yeah, you couldn't even write that, right? But I just thought about my good friend who worked with me she was an SVP, how she sort of stepped in the gap for us there to make that happen, and so those kinds of things have just happened, over my life, but Boise was really great. It was a place where I enjoyed. It was beautiful. I mean, you had the mountains and, you had the coast and, so we were able to travel those states, Oregon, Seattle, and, go down to California, and we loved it.
If you haven't already, please help us rank higher on YouTube by taking a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Is that kind of when the thought and your passion around like diversity and justice, or is that just from your childhood? Or talk about like what lit that fire in you.
Yeah, I think it was from a childhood, right? Because you saw one chapter in the book, racism is over, right? So I said that to my aunt, who told me politely that it will never be over as long as I'm the color I am, right? And you know why I said that was because I was bussed out to school when I was in the 4th grade, and I became the president of the 6th grade class. So I always tease that I was the first black president, and
Yes, you were.
but I learned to assimilate, and as I got older, I learned how to fit in. I learned how to do the job that was called for. My pastor always had me in jobs through the summer and the fall, and I worked in some of the biggest and greatest brand department stores downtown Brooklyn. I worked in all of them. And, very often people would look and say, "This guy is pretty young. What's he doing here?" Number 1, more than that is it was me, and how I looked what they meant, but I never took it personal. It was just about doing my job, and I think that, being comfortable around people, just wound up being natural for me, and so as I think
And what do
about
you attribute that to, like, as far as a mentor in your life,
Yeah,
or,
well,
where did
one
you get
thing is
that?
that my mother always told me that a smile and a good morning, doesn't
And you
cost
have a
you a
great
thing.
smile,
Yeah, it
so
it it
that's
doesn't
that
cost you a
helps.
thing, so I always
Right.
did that, and I always just kinda made myself, available to people. I don't care what they look like or how they sound. And then it went from there as I moved in my career and moved to different places. You go in and for me, it was easy because, my wife was the trailing spouse and always had to reinvent herself, but I would just walk in just to a new family. It was the same company, but just a new family. And so you had to learn to work in that and navigate yourself into a new environment like that. And so we did, and we did it in the communities and I did it at work. And I just never really had I didn't really have any bad experiences, like some people have had in terms of racism. Now, when I was first bussed out to school, in Queens, New York, we did have a group of people protesting that day when we were getting off the school bus. Go home. I never heard a racial epithet, but they said go home. They had those snares on their faces. They actually was rocking the bus. Well, the police showed up. They escorted us into school. The next day, nothing. And from that point on, from 4th grade till, uh, 9th grade, I was all in that community because uh, public school to junior high school, I was in Queens, and I never had a problem like that. I never saw anything like that ever again. And
Wow.
so then it would
I bet that was part too of your fire, of diversity and
yeah,
inclusion. You have a quote in the book, a Brene Brown quote on belonging.
yeah,
I don't have it memorized, but I loved that. And I think knowing you for many years, you really brought that inclusion and belonging,
yeah,
particularly to
yeah.
Walmart. So I'd love you to touch on that a little bit and like I think your Walmart journey and your accomplishments at Walmart were huge.
Yeah, I think in my work life, that was always a thing because I could understand, some of the stares and people trying to figure out why you're here. But I never would do that. I just felt like if you're here, you belong here, right? And so we got a job to do. Let's do it. And I just always wanted to remember. My mother told me that you have a good heart. You have a heart for grace, and so you don't really meet an enemy unless you choose to. And so while there were some that were like that, fine, but but grace has a way of moving people out of your way and the right people in your way, right? And so that's how it's always happened for me. I've had some really not so great bosses, but some circumstance caused me to move or them to move. And then I moved on to
And to learn, I mean, I remember
yeah,
reading that in your book
yeah,
too, and the lessons that you learned
yes,
about how to even manage around
yeah,
kind of a really tough
that's
boss.
right.
And so talk about that. Like what were some of those hardships and how you overcame?
Yeah, I think it was really just demeanor. People sometimes are insecure, right? And you see somebody that is, likable, intelligent, and and people oriented. And that's a big thing about being a leader because you have to be that, right? The target gets larger as you grow in your career. And it's really then about relationships and how you treat people. It's not necessarily the mechanics and task of the job. And there are some people are built with task oriented only, and they don't know how to manage up or across or down, and you have to know that in order to be able to be successful long term. And so I've watched a lot of people over time not be successful or right at the pinnacle of their success, they get their legs cut from under them because karma, as you said, comes back around. It does, right? Because you say something out of your mouth or you do something that causes you to lose your job. And, you wonder why, what happened? And so I think to your point, there's always a lesson learned, and I didn't care whether they were good or bad bosses. I learned something from every single person, and I just sort of, took that and made my own gumbo. But I also remember saying to myself, if I'm ever have the opportunity to lead people, I'm going to lead differently. And while I wasn't perfect, but I was always reminded of what I committed to myself. So even when I said something wrong or I did something wrong, I went back and apologized. Now that makes you a little bit vulnerable sometimes. People might think they could take advantage, and trust me, people tried to, in fact, probably did and did. I recognized it, but it didn't stop me from being who I was, and it didn't stop me from wanting to be kind and understand a person's situation.
And humble, and that is how you grow trust. And I think your role, I'd love you to dig into back to Walmart. It's like you couldn't force people to buy any of the people within to buy. So how you had to influence, like talk about how you got people to you gained
Yeah,
credibility.
it's exactly what you said, Lorette. Anytime you go into an environment new or and you don't have an actual decision, and influence becomes really the way that you have to do it. But more than that, it's about trust and credibility and understanding the person's pain point and what their resistance is and why. And sometimes that takes a little time to figure that out. And so my during my time at Walmart, that's exactly what I did. I spent time learning my stakeholders and what their pain points were and how I could help them. Now, I had a great advantage because I was a merchant. I sold, I bought, I worked with the supply diversity person that was at the company before I ever took over. But that was an easy sell. He never had to he could drop something off at my desk and not even have to give a spiel because he knew that I would look at it objectively and that I had the information in front of me. So if I wanted to contact people, I would contact them and talk to them. And almost every time I did, when it made sense for me, right? But it was that sort of mindset that I, used when I approached and took the job at Walmart. It was the same way. I just tried to understand where people were, what
Right, and I think you having both sides of that and being worked in both sides, you totally
yeah.
understood
And it
understood
helped me
that.
and it built credibility, and so therefore people were more susceptible to listen to me because they know that I had been there and I could speak the language, right? And I leveraged that to the hilt. Now, there are times when I had to lean, and that's when, some authority would come to bear, whether it would be me or it would be their boss or the boss's boss. I wasn't shy when it came to, uh, upholding what it was that I was being paid to do. Especially when I knew that there's a conflict here that is, motion driven and not fact based, then that's where my role was to get to that back to that center where the customer was, and that's usually how I was able to help resolve any issues that were, came in play as it related to the merchant and or the supplier.
And you talk a little bit about the goal that you had to achieve. I mean, it was no small feat.
Yeah, yeah, well, that's the reason why I went to Walmart is we had a women's own goal, sourcing goal at that time. It was $20 billion over a 5-year period. I came in 2012. It was announced in 2011, but the work didn't start until 2012. And,
I mean,
of
that's a
course,
big hill.
yeah, it was a huge one to go by. And yet, we exceeded it. It culminated at the end of 2016, the beginning of 2017, and we had exceeded it by $1 billion.
That is just
It
congratulations. I love
Thank you.
that
It was a
story.
fabulous and it was just not me, it was just just an awesome team of people inside Walmart, and we had to do a lot of work externally, right, to kinda share. I think you remember that we donated the women-owned seal to WeBank
Yes, I do remember that.
because we created it for ourselves because we wanted to be able to show products in our stores that had that label on it, and we knew we couldn't do it from the inside, so the next best thing was to gift it to WeBank and have some sort of, guideline as to who got to use it, and if you're a certified woman-owned business, you got to use it, you could put it on your stationery or you could put it on your bottle of water, whichever you want, and today I see it everywhere.
It's very
Yeah, I
recognized.
was in
Yeah,
Costco,
yeah.
just a couple weeks ago and some sheets. I was looking at sheets, woman owned, right on the plaque.
And you probably bought them because they were
I did.
woman-owned.
I did.
I
I
do, I
did. I
do,
did do it.
and not even only woman-owned,
Yeah.
I mean, it can be I love Tom's Shoes that,
Yeah.
you buy a Tom's
Yeah.
Shoes and then they
Yeah.
donate, anything that's got a good purpose and a cause,
Yeah.
it's important.
Yeah. Well,
It's very
one thing
important.
we know is that women business owners and other business owners as well, but I do know women, they're tribal. They take care of their family, they take care of the community. And so for
Ooh,
me,
that gave me chills, Michael. I love
well, it
that.
is true. And so if I can be a small part in that and buy a pack of sheets, I'll do it.
And talk a little bit about how much you've invested in developing the minority-owned businesses and what you do for women and different minority-owned businesses to help them secure business with big places like Walmart or even yeah, just the way you coach
Yeah, I
them.
think it was really, I really always talk to people with this, mindset of you being the best person that has this product or service. While you are a woman and you're the CEO, but I want you to focus on the fact that this Walmart doesn't have this product and they need it, and here's why, right? Or Walmart doesn't have this service solution and they need it, and here's why, right? Because that's going to carry you further than the fact that you're woman owned, right? But you need to be proud of that. You've established your company and they now know that you're the CEO. But let's get back to really why we're here, right? We have the best product and we know that Walmart needs to have it. So that's my first sort of coaching spiel that I will have for folk, whether we decide to do business with them or not. But I think the other piece was my job was to try to get them at least able to answer 80% of the questions before they ever got in front of a merchant. Merchant's always going to have something that they're going to say, but because of my background, I was able to help people, provide them that kind of consultation to get their decks ready for a potential meeting if it came to that. And but the other thing is I use the external organizations a lot. I was privileged to have the type of budget that would allow me to do training programs. As I mentioned, we started the Next Gen at WeBank. We started the Women of Color Initiative at WeBank, and myself along with some other corporations. It usually takes one or two to get it off the ground, and then once everyone sees it's successful, everybody else wants to come in. But any way I felt like I can create development or learning opportunities so that people could grow, I was doing whatever I could to either participate or fund.
Yeah, and I think I love that you would help. You were we talked about this a little bit the other day, but what I would call in Miller Hyman sales terms, a coach inside, and you're coaching. And before they even get to do their pitch to whoever it is within Walmart, you're double checking their deck and I think that's just huge. And you said one thing when we talked recently about research.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how
It
important.
was always important. I said, do your research, spend 100 hours for a 30-minute meeting, is what I said.
Yep,
And so
it's
people would
true.
look at you like wide eyed, 100 hours. I said, well, not all at one time. So that means
Right.
take your time and understand who it is you're trying to pursue. And then where
Mm-hmm.
can you find information on a company? And there are a myriad of things, your annual reports, CSR reports. For goodness sake, Walmart's in the news every day. So that's the other thing. You gotta pay attention to that stuff.
We definitely should talk about, which we've talked about a little bit lately, but the importance of diversity right now with this current political and administration and political environment. What do you feel like is the best advice for listeners on how they should navigate the times?
Yeah. It's interesting because we spent some time talking about this Tuesday, with the group of professional practitioners, supply diversity practitioners, and I had a couple of great speakers in. But one thing that I've been saying is that this is not a time for us to sort of get stuck and be paralyzed by the fact that, the name changes happen, et cetera. This is a time for us to level up and shore up our programs, our business. If you're a business owner, the idea of, getting in because you're a woman or because you knew someone, that's all well and fine. It happens all the time, but you really want to be the person who has a compelling reason for any organization to work with you. And you have to do your homework in order to build a compelling reason for me to make a decision to buy from you, whether it's a product or a service. The other part is really about creating alliances. And I think we have to go back, Laurette, to the 101, if you will, right? So if you're going to go meet somebody in today's environment, you can pretty much research them. You can find
Yep.
out what college.
LinkedIn has a
That's
lot
right.
on
You
there.
find out what college they go to, what things they like, and what they do for vacations, because people posting all the time. And so to me, you need to do that as part of that 100 hours of research so that when you do sit in front of them with that deck and all that you have prepared, you can break the ice. And believe me, if all of a sudden we went to the same college, well, that just takes down anxiety right there. Oh my God, what year were you there? And so we go from there. And then if all of a sudden, you say, well, my kids played in the AAU, and you say, well, my kids played in the AAU. So it lessens the anxiety. It doesn't guarantee a contract, but typically the people sitting on the other side, part of their demeanor is to get control right from the front. And that's a problem, quite frankly. That's sort of a learned bad behavior. Because if you're going to try to create a relationship, you should go into that openly. I understand we got to talk about price, but let me understand what kind of person you are, number one, because we could wind up doing business and you'd be horrible. And you're somebody I brought into my organization, creating havoc for everybody that you interact with. That's not a smart move. So I want to first find out what the type of person you are. And those kinds of things can lower the anxiety. And so that's why I spend a lot of time talking to entrepreneurs. And today, I think we have to go back and revisit those things as minute as they may sound. You'd be surprised how many people have kind of shied away from that. And then this whole, leveling up that I talk about, this notion of doing things and ensuring that you have operational excellence in everything you do. Because that's what corporations operate on. You're a corporation. It's about excellence in your organization. I know it is. You can't be in business for as long as you have without excellence at the forefront. And so I think people have to understand that, you hear a lot of, oh, I'm so sorry that happened, or well, you can only say that so many times. Uh, Especially when you're talking about disrupting a supply chain and or you've got some technology that's no longer working and my customer is affected by that or my associates are affected by it. So I think operational excellence needs to be at the forefront. Things are gonna happen. They're doing what they're doing, be it administration or whoever it is, local agitators, whatever it is, but business will continue. And I truly believe that, I saw some stats yesterday that, 76% of the corporations that had been, interviewed by this one group that was speaking to us saw no change for the supply diversity effort at all, other than they maybe are going to change the name to mitigate the triggers, if you will.
Isn't that
It
ridiculous? It's
it
semantics that
it
we have
really
to.
is, but that's how they search
Yeah,
you today. So if they use
yeah.
AI, they can see diversity, inclusion, economic, whatever those are. There's an actual real list of words that these folks are using to search.
Yeah, WeBank was helpful on having their town hall and showing us all these trigger words, but I tell you what, I am so grateful to be privately held and to be able to use this platform to, really, because we talked about it too, like, supplier diversity was never about special treatment, or it was a door opener back to Coach. It was, "Let me help you navigate Walmart because it's big." And then once I open the door and get you in the right direction, it's on you to show value, and I don't that's not gonna
Yeah,
change,
and it
and it
and it and it is at the core. So as long as you're doing that, I spoke to a few executive friends of mine from the company and other companies, and they said, "Well, what's your take? And what should I do?" I said, "What have you been doing?" And they go,
exactly. Lean in.
"Yeah." They
Lean
said,
in.
"Well, I got you." And one of them said, "That's exactly." It was a young lady. She said, "That's exactly what I thought you would say, Michael Byron." I said, "Yeah, you're doing it at
And
such
your
a."
voice is so powerful
Yeah,
right now, Michael. I mean, I think your reputation over the years, everyone trusts you like we were talking about before, so I really appreciate that you're going out there speaking, speaking about your book,
yeah,
and it's important right now. It's
yeah.
very
It is.
important. I think
I've
you
been
bring
told.
a calm,
Yeah.
which is that's great.
What's interesting, one of my, coworker or teammates, I should say, at the conference board wrote a post out there, and, it was something she had said in the end, and she said, "You just have a calming demeanor." She thanked everybody who contributed and spoke. You'll see it out there. Her name is Deborah, Vanderlinder, but, in the end, she said, "Thank you so much to our program director who keeps us calm and centered and his demeanor just allows us to have a mutually beneficial meeting every time we're out."
I feel that way. It's such an important role in
Yeah,
leadership, isn't it? Like, I think of myself often as the flight
yeah,
attendant when you're going through turbulence, and I know my employees are looking at even around this diversity
yeah.
issue, like, "We're not changing, are we?"
Mhm,
Hell no,
mhm,
we're not
mhm.
changing.
That's right. But see, you've got this gift, this platform, and this is, allowing people to talk about things, and this provides information so that people understand they're not alone in this, and there are ways that we're going to, proceed and progress. We are. Because that
And get
Yeah,
stronger,
even
what
stronger,
does
that's right. We're gonna come out of
even
this strong
stronger.
because 'cause we're a resilient people. And
We
now
are.
if we can and we're gonna always have differences, but it's okay to differ. But at the end of the day, if we're collaborating, we've got to understand what is the goal, and if we're both working to that goal, then we're gonna be okay, if we keep that centered. But if we allow our emotions to cloud our judgment and people agitating and people saying bad things, it thwarts your energy and your
Right,
intellect.
it
And
does.
and and we
It's
know
so
that
true.
because I know my colleagues, a lot of them, they're exhausted and they feel a personal attack, if you will. And I gotta be honest with you,
I get it. I feel it.
yeah,
I
I
I
think I would have
I
felt
get
it
it.
if I were still in corporate America. I would have felt it. I would have been trying to defend it. But what I know of myself is that I'd have gone home, took a deep breath, and came back the next day and said, "Okay, so I got to change the name. Okay, but it doesn't change my work and how I do my work, and it doesn't alienate a group of people or any of that. I'm not gonna do that because that's not who I am.
I love that, Michael.
Yeah,
It doesn't change my
yeah,
values. You cannot
that's right.
change my
I won't,
values,
I
no
won't.
matter. I think that's a really strong point to
Yeah,
hang our hat
yeah.
on.
Somebody in my book, I think yeah, I know I wrote it. I had an executive say to me, Michael, you're a great business person, but you lead too much with your heart." And my
Wrong.
mother told me that was one of my best qualities. So,
And
am I supposed to?
I would second your mother on
Yeah,
that. It's so
and I
true.
said, "I'm
My
supposed to."
mom gave me a
Y
heart. It was a really ugly necklace. I've written
Yeah,
about this before, but
yeah,
it had like a heart with a crown on it. And she's like, I know you're never going to wear this ugly necklace, but it's leading. She's like, this is how I see you lead with your heart and your head.
yeah,
And
that's
I'm
right.
like, it was the best compliment I ever
That's
got.
exactly right, and I said that day, this is what happens in corporate America. First, it's your name, and then it's your values, right? Because the people and believe it or not, my mother is the one that brought that to my attention.
I believe it. I
I
believe
was
it. And you can
Yeah,
be, we were just talking to another woman earlier today about being fearless. But you can still have, like, compassion and and a
yeah,
heart.
yeah, yeah, and
It's the yin and yang or the tension of opposites, which my mom used to talk about. That's where the beauty happens, and I think that's so true.
But, the thing too that I would say in this moment where we are is continue to be your authentic self. It's gonna always win. It always will win or either if your authentic self, runs you off the rail, then you know that that was probably not your authentic self, right? If you're thinking
And it's
straight.
so much less energy
That's
to
right.
just be who you
Just to
are
be who you
than
are.
to try to fake something. It would be
It
exhausting,
is
and
as a
life's exhausting enough.
It
We
is.
don't have to
Life is exhausting
add.
enough without that, right? And so that's how I always felt. And I think sometimes, did it cost me? Well, I don't know. And I don't care because I don't know what it cost me. I'm still standing. And that executive, while he didn't browbeat me, he just, he just had a couple of drinks and he felt he needed to say that. And I said respectfully, I can't change that about me.
There's one part in the book, I love this aspect. It's kind of a two-part question, but, um you talked about having, like, little love letters that you've gotten from people and you brought it around with you, so I'd love you to kinda touch on that, and what are you the most proud of, a life or lives that you've touched over your career? Like, what really is, like kinda goes with that box concept,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Thank you for asking that question. Uh, at my lowest hours, and I had a lot of them at Walmart. Um, it's such a big place. It's so daunting. Sometimes you just kind of want to just get in the shell. but,
Yeah.
but I would open that box.
And what would those hours be about, though? Was it you were frustrated you couldn't
Yeah, it
move the
would be that
needle,
I wanted
or
to do more and had to slow down or, this issue with a supplier, what it could be a number of things, right? But I would always pull that box down. And my wife was a good reminder for me. And she says, you need to remember why you're there. You're there to help people. You have a gift. You have to help the people externally and you have to help your colleagues internally. And as I saw that developing, 'cause in that box, I've got, notes from my colleagues internal. "Michael, thank you." It's one special one that I added into the love letters, if you will. But then it was really about, shoring myself up, reassuring myself that I was doing the right thing no matter what. And then, it was really, when I meet people, you never know how you're gonna impact people, so that's why you always have to be pleasant and kind because people remember, Maya Angelou said, people, don't remember what you said or did, but they remember how you made them feel, and I know that for the firsthand how I felt when people didn't treat me the way that I felt I needed to be treated, and I carried that with me so long sometimes that it became a problem because I would see that person and, anxiety would happen, and then I eventually let it go because you have to let it go, right? And so every encounter, I had to try to make it the best that I possibly could, and where I'm reaping it. I saw it all along while I was in corporate America, but now, Laurette, I mean, I got young people coming out of the woodwork on LinkedIn wanting to connect and say, "Hey, I haven't talked to you." I talked to a young man I haven't talked to in 10 years, and he was someone I had to almost literally grab in the collar because he was walking around with his chest stuck out at Walmart. He lasted about a year because he couldn't figure out how to navigate. He's so brilliant, had his prestigious degree from a Ivy League college, and that's all would ever come out of his mouth, you know? And while you're brilliant, you knew nothing about relationship building and interpersonal skills or even collaboration, if you will. But we
How
spoke.
do you think, I don't think I ever let you answer the last question all the way, but that one just got me going somewhere else. How do you think COVID and, having to work from home, and now I know people are coming back, but like that generation, how do you think it affected them on the relationship aspect?
Yeah, I think some of them are early in their career when that happened. So you didn't get a chance to form, and so it's really about talking on the screen and not even being present there. You're off camera, so you're doing something else. So you're multitasking or doing the laundry. I don't know, but I would tell you that I saw the same thing when people were in person. Sometimes they were absent in the room, and you could look at it, and then I would say, "Hey, Laurette, what you think?" Because
You called them
yeah,
out. That's
nicely, 'cause
awesome.
you're in the
Oh,
room for a
yeah.
reason. They didn't just invite you to warm a seat. You gotta contribute, right? And so that was my way of helping to mentor. And, people would laugh, "Oh, I was thinking that." I said, "Well, you were thinking, but you never said anything." And I said, "And then somebody's gonna say when we go through calibrations and see who getting raises, somebody's gonna say, 'You know what? Lorette's always in the room, but she never says anything. She's a good employee.'" And so then you'll be just that good employee, well placed, but not suited for elevation or promotion. And I wouldn't want that on my watch if I know that you're more capable than that, right? Especially if you and I have a relationship. I'm never gonna let you sit idle like that. You're in the room, or I'll bring you in the room, and I'm bringing you for a reason because you're intelligent, you're smart, you have good ideas, and you don't have to be the loudest person in the room. Sometimes the one thing you said is lasting.
Yeah, I love that, and really encouraging, particularly women, which I'm sure I know you do, to find their voice and to be brave and to speak up
Yeah, yeah.
even when
Well, I
they're
told you that
afraid, you know?
story. I've had that happen where, a male will say, well, what I believe Lorette was saying, and I say, well, I don't think we need to have you tell us what Lorette was saying. I fully understood, and I think if anybody else in here didn't, we would have asked the question. And so well, I didn't mean it that way, but that's exactly how they meant it. And these are, this is executive level people that I've called out on a dozen times like that in all 3 companies that I've been in, because that's one of those things. It's kinda like when you're talking and somebody, you're talking and someone puts their hand on your shoulder to say, "Excuse me," so they can interject. You haven't finished your thought yet, so they just feel like either you're not headed where you need to. I don't know what that is. Re
It's a trigger is what it
it's a
is, Michael.
it's a real trigger
It's a
for me
trigger.
because I can feel.
I've had it. I've had someone, like, literally shush me and put their hand on my shoulder,
That's
and
right.
I'm like, "For real?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
you didn't just do that, right? I mean, and just imagine if you had that done to you a few times, your voice now goes silent because you're worried about the pat, or you're worried about somebody trying to explain what you said. You begin to think, "Was I not clear? So let me just shut up then, because I don't ever wanna have somebody."
Exactly, or that my whatever I'm contributing has no worth, that it goes right to the worthiness, and you're like, "Okay," and you just go invisible.
Keep
Stuff
my head
I've been
down, and I'll
there.
just do
Yeah.
the job, and I won't say anything because 'cause I'm afraid that, someone's gonna put me on blast. So I don't know, I just kinda went through life not wanting to be that person. I certainly don't proclaim perfection, but, I just know how I wanted to be treated, so I just used that motto and treated everybody fairly and came to the aid of people and pulled the coattails of my colleagues.
I love how you, were so great at, like, combining us women-owned businesses for one thing. Like, I know we've talked about so many times, and it must be hard in any supplier diversity role where the business is too small, but you were great at connecting us together, going, I might not be able to buy, but Lorette could buy from you, so let me introduce you to her.
And we need more of that, Lorette, even especially in this time right now. And I know you're out there, you see them all the time, and you find that young talent, eager, willing to work. There's something that makes sense, and there could be synergies. That you could change a life, and you've changed many lives. But just imagine that you make something like that happen, they'll never forget it. But more importantly, they'll repeat it.
That's so true. Yeah, and I wanna go back to that because there was a story I really want you to tell that I was leading you to, about, the women, that made the wine.
Yeah, the McBride sisters. Yeah, no, they were wonderful young women. They came to Minneapolis one of the coldest days in January, and I told them, "Wait till April. It's too cold." But they
I'm always in
yeah.
Minneapolis in January, I don't know why that happens.
Well, they were, and they came, and they were in their fur coats and everything, and, the rest of it really was just, I just felt something. I seen it right away. I loved their story. They were convicted. They had no money. They had no knowledge of the wine industry, but they felt they could do it, and in the long they were long lost sisters that didn't know each other for most of their lives, so that you can't even write this stuff. It's got
You
I'm
can't
sure
make that
somebody's
up.
I'm sure there's gonna be a movie or something on them one day because it's just that way. They have been so successful in a male, white-dominated industry. These 2 black sisters have done something phenomenal that I don't know if it'll ever be done again. They actually are the 2nd African American family in Napa Valley that owns a vineyard. And
Wow.
and listen, they've been in business 20 years. How do you go 20 years, build a company, and buy a vineyard in Napa Valley of all places? And
And
so
because of you, I buy their wine,
yeah.
so
Well,
there you
listen,
go, you know?
when I met them, I told them I was going to help them, and I did. And that day, after when they left my office that day, the next day when they opened up their emails, there were 10 introductions to United Airlines, Delta Airlines, Target, you name it. Wherever I knew I had a good colleague who I knew would take care of them, that's what I did. And they'll
I
tell
mean,
you that.
Michael, that is just
Yeah,
awesome. I
yeah,
mean, because you used your connections for good,
yeah, I
and I
did.
I know
Absolutely
you
did.
always
And it
did.
was all these years later, they were doing a podcast with, Guy Raz, you know that gentleman, and on that,
Uh-huh,
like, they
it was, How It's Made,
yeah, yeah,
right?
How I
Yeah,
Built
yeah,
That.
or How I Built It,
Yeah,
yeah,
and,
that one.
they told me, "Hey, go listen to this podcast," and I go, "Okay, why? Are you guys on it?" "Yeah, yeah, yeah, but, listen to the whole thing, though." And so, right in the
Uh-huh,
second
'cause
part
you get a call out, I love that.
yeah.
I listened to it, it was really
Yeah,
good.
it was a special moment for me, and they're special young ladies, and I'm just happy to see what they've done. But, there are a lot of stories like that, large and small, where you make a difference in people's lives, and they in turn make a difference in your life as well, right? And I can say I learned a lot from those young ladies, and one of the things was resiliency. They would not give up. And when they had a problem they thought I could help with, they would come to me and I would tell them, I don't care when, what, just tell me, especially if it concerned our business. But we even had to get into the industry and we had to leverage our scale and size with a few distributors because of the way that they were treating them. I went to our executives and I said, I don't have the authority to talk to your business relationships. And, it's so regulated and all, but just had a nice conversation about how we want suppliers that are supplying us to be treated.
Yeah,
And that
you got
changed.
some power
And it
there, big
changed just
power.
like this. That
Mhm.
simple conversation wasn't long. It just changed. When you bring that kind of voice and use your seat of influence in that way, they can only, if they want to continue doing business, they got to do it the right way. And the right way is that you're going to handle them just like you handle anyone else with professionalism, and you're going to show their products. And don't you dare ever decide for us what you're going to show us. Your job is to show me everything. Let me make the decision on whether I'm going to buy or not. And so I can tell you, I'm sure that that helped a lot of other women and people of color wine companies because I refused. I said, "Listen, you don't get to say what we will buy. You show us everything and you allow us to tell you what we don't want or want." And that's how that went, and they were involved in that.
Why is the mafia coming to my mind as you're talking about that?
Yeah. But yeah, it was, and they continue to do wonderful things. They've got a She Can Foundation where they, donate to young women, entrepreneurs coming up in the wine industry. I mean, so when you see that
They would
evolution
be great judges on, I I gotta get them on this
you
podcast, that's
should,
what we gotta
you
do.
should.
That would be
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
But they would
I'll
be
make an
great in Female
introduction. I'll
Strong.
make an
Thank
introduction.
you. So now at this season of your life and you're an author and a speaker, so like what does the future hold or what does success look like in this phase of your life?
It is to have more opportunities like you've afforded me. I appreciate it so much. You just don't know. And
Ah, it's
to
my
Yep,
pleasure.
and
That's
to, just to continue to keep pouring in where I can. I don't wanna get exhausted. I got a life to live. My wife's gonna she keeps control of how many hours I work,
as you
as
should.
she
That's
should,
awesome.
and I love her for that. But, just to keep pouring in, I don't wanna stop, giving and helping people. And, I have a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, but I have a small swath of clients that I'm helping to think about their business differently. That's sort of how I see my role today. I don't knock on doors. If I have a way to connect you, I do that. But it's mostly about looking internal at the company. And while you're doing well, figure out how to do some good and helping people with that. But and I'm in my nephews and nieces' ears. I just had a niece, 25. She's now embarking onto her new career in kinesiology, and she was working at a daycare, and she was trying to figure out whether she should give a 2 week notice. Should she write a formal letter because the person was a family member? And I said, yes, you need to do all those things. And she wrote.
Yeah. And maybe a 4-week
That's
notice.
right, and she wrote a wonderful letter. I was so impressed by that, but I had her in my arms, and now she's a young woman embarking on her career, so I think that's the 3rd act for me, is to, make sure my wife and I are having fun, but at the same time, giving of my time where I can and doing these
It's
types of
freedom,
things.
Michael. I think to me it sounds like
It
freedom.
is, it
Like,
is. It's
you
sort of
know?
I call it sort of, I get to, have the unvarnished truth when I'm talking to people, and that is free, right? Because I've had people, believe it or not, Laurette, wanna work with me, and I knew it was about, and not that I'm some big somebody, but you can build
Well, you kind of
yeah,
are.
but you build credit people, you leverage people for credibility purposes. And I can
Right.
because of the discernment that I have, I can feel that. And so I'm doing what I wanna do with who I want to do it with today. I'm fortunate that I don't have to do anything if I don't want. But because I can't sit still and I don't play golf and I don't play pickleball
And because you need a
and
purpose, because you are a
I need to stay
purpose-driven
on my
man.
purpose. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I
That's a
totally get
great way
that.
of summing it up. I'm trying to stay on my purpose and God has gifted me. And I know one thing is that your gifts are not always for you. They're for others. And so I'll keep
And
it.
that kinda leads back a little bit to your book because well, one thing I wanted to ask you, and I think maybe you already told me this, but it took you, like, 10 years,
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
it,
it
to
was
write this?
12 years. Yeah, it was because
I love hearing
well,
that because I'm, as you know, trying to write a
yeah,
book too, and it's like and you write it, like, just like you said, you write it, then I haven't for a while, then I'll pick it up again, and I know there's one chapter still, like, it's not done
yeah,
yet, and
yeah. And because you're
it's a
at
labor
different
of love.
phases and moments in your life. And when
True.
I was writing, I had death, lost family members. I was sad, hurt. I was almost a vigilante, but God saved me, right? And then I was bitter, bad working relationship, bad boss. So your creativeness is thwarted at that point. I wrote all the words. I got them all. But I thought, "Why am I writing this book?" So the book I wrote it because I wanna help somebody, and I used to hear this when I was a small boy in church, and I still hear it today, where the pastor will say, if it helps somebody, if it helps one somebody, then you've done your job. You've done what God has asked you to do." And so that's what I thought about, and to date, I've sold about 500 books. So
That's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that, and I feel the same way, I mean, even doing this podcast, which we've talked about, I feel the same way. If one person listens to you and I talking and they go, "Oh, I'm gonna start the love letter book or the love letter box," or, I don't know, they get one takeaway, like, I love the part about the research and, anything we can teach or share our experiences,
And believe me, someone always
yeah.
does. You may not ever know it, and that's okay. You're not supposed to know all of those things. Let them go on, and hopefully they repeat that so somebody else gets a spark and on and on and on. Because usually when people gain something like that, there's freedom and there is purpose in sharing it. And so when you can find that, and I think somebody said, I forget who it was said, it was a politician or I'm trying to think, but the person said, I got to look it up now because now my mind is slipping now on who, but it was about, you know, the most important time in your life is when you were born and when you find your purpose. I want to say it was Benjamin
Ooh.
Franklin, I think.
Ooh, I don't know
But
that
that
saying. I love it.
yeah, but most important time is when you were born and when you find your purpose, and you're gonna be darn lucky when you find that purpose and that spark that makes you get up every day and continue to do what you do, and serving others. And this gift piece that, this down inside of us that's not always for us, that's critical too, right? Because I'm not trying to gain fame or fortune. I'm just trying to impact other lives through what I'm saying, and I've been
Well,
very.
I think that's a great segue though, I was gonna say, but, uh, it kinda leads to, what is the legacy that you would like to leave behind, you know?
Yeah, this humility, somebody said this to me a couple weeks ago, you had this humility, and, in fact, I heard it in a sermon too, about sometimes humility can, paralyze you, and I think it probably did for me. Like, I didn't always wanna be in the forefront. I could work from behind and make a difference. But and that's the other thing about my 3rd act now, is that I'm trying to walk in it now, not but still be humble. I don't have my chest out, but God has given me, the ability to do what I do, and so I now need to try this, and that's what the pastor said, "Step into the moment. Whether you know how to do it or not, he's gonna be there with you." If that's what you wanna do. And it was at my church that I heard our pastor say it because guess what? Now I am working on a strategic plan with the church to expand our sanctuary. I just went over it with the pastor. I I wanted to do something. I didn't wanna lead a ministry or do any of that, and, my head is business and churches, people don't whether they believe it or not, church has a business aspect of it. That's how the lights stay on and the air is on,
Right, it
right?
has to,
And so,
yeah.
when I was told that he asked me at Christmas time, he said, "Hey, I want you to pray about it, Brother Byron. I want you to be my advisor for a capital campaign." So I didn't really wanna do it, but it kept gnawing on me, and it was because I hadn't done it, but I've been around it. I've been in churches where it's happened. I've run projects before, so I had the chops to do what he needs me to do, but I was just wanting to shy away. And so now
'Cause you wanted to be invisible,
I did.
and
I said I
and
would
I
help from
think
here.
right,
And
right,
but
and
we
now
got
you
it.
gotta be
Yeah,
visible.
but we got it pretty clear here just a week ago, so when we met, that I'm just gonna be an advisor. We're gonna have a committee that's gonna run it. I've already laid the blueprint, and now I'm working on work streams for those groups and how we
But
get there.
this is why you gotta become visible now.
Yeah, and you're right.
This and I totally
Yeah,
get it,
yeah,
I totally get it,
yeah,
and it even like I've said that doing this, like, it puts you out of your comfort zone, but it's where you grow,
yeah. And
So
it's true, and I'm telling you that I told my daughter this too, and there's been a this I've had fear. I've had fear of failure. And I had insecurities as well, I've had them, and I believe they may have missed some opportunities because of it. But now there's a point in my life now where, yeah, I can stand in my truth now, and I know that I'm capable. I always knew I was, but, sometimes I just would stand back and just kinda do the work and do the yeoman's work and do the task and can be strategic and all of those things. I had some really wonderful moments. Boy, I was when we were in Bentonville, I must have carried 3 boxes of plaques and awards that I had won over the years for sales contest and best sales of the quarter. I remember being in Albertsons. We had 22 divisions. My division was number 22. It was the worst in the company, but I got promoted. They gave me the worst division in the company when I got promoted.
to go fix it.
2 years later, I'm number 1.
Wow. Well, that says a lot.
And you can't believe how proud I was at that moment. And so as I'm taking the plaques, the stuff off the plaques, the little metal pieces, so I'm trying to separate it because I want to destroy them because I was just carrying it around for what? And I had always had it in the office. We always had our wall of fame, but I kind of grew out of that. And so I was just my wife, when are you going to get rid of all this stuff? So
No, you gotta make, like, a quilt of them
Well,
all,
I
you know,
kept the
like
metal pieces. I just got rid of the
yeah,
wood, and I don't know
and then
what I'm
put it
gonna
on,
do.
like, put them on a frame. I could totally
Yeah, I
see that.
might wind up doing
No,
something
yeah,
like that.
don't get rid of those, that's
Yeah,
cool.
it was kinda
Because
special.
your kids, your grandkids, someone's gonna be
Yeah,
like, "Wow,
yeah.
that's
I
very
had a whole
cool."
bunch of them. I was
That's
like, "Wow, that's right."
that's legacy making stuff,
It
so
is,
do
it
not get rid of
is.
that.
Hard work, never killed anybody, but you do get the rewards, and sometimes you don't think that people are watching, but they always are. I got the worst division because, you know, I'll tell you this, and I think if I'm able to write another one, it's going to be the title is going to be, "The Last is Always First." Right? It's a biblical, it's in the Bible, "The first shall be last, or the last shall be first." And so I've always been sort of last. Out of my peers, when we were getting promoted out of Florida, I wasn't the last, it was one person after me, but all of 5 or 6 of them before me all got the best divisions, walked right into a bonus. I went into the division where they hadn't bonused in 10 years.
But you're the turnaround guy.
And it was and they assembled a whole team to go there. And in that division, that's where I had one of the worst bosses I ever had. But even in that, I still was able to move ahead and do some yeoman's work because eventually they moved him out of the way, brought somebody else in. Then all of a sudden, all of us, my colleagues included, we just thrived then. I mean, the creativity was just,
Doesn't that goes to show how important leadership is,
yeah,
right? I mean, when you look at something going sideways, you gotta look at the leader
yeah,
because
you really do.
they have
And
so
people
much
walk away
power
from
over
it.
culture.
Yep.
Yeah.
People walk away, but I refuse because I had told my wife, "I'm gonna get to Boise. We're gonna do this, and and so I couldn't let somebody beat me down,
Little competitive nature there,
yeah,
huh?
that came out, right? But, I just wasn't gonna I'm not gonna get hit in the jaw for no reason at all and not come back, right? So I just waited my turn and it just wound up being and believe me, when I got the job in Boise, my other 22 colleagues, at least 16 of them were ahead of me. They should have been considered for that job, but that's where grace showed up, and I wound up getting the job, and now all those people who were seasoned people before me were now working for me.
Meant to be,
Yeah, it
absolutely.
was. I've had a lot of, a lot of last, first situations, I relish
I
them.
like that.
Yeah.
That's a good title.
Yeah, I'm gonna
You're
think
good at
through it.
titles.
It's typed on one piece of paper right now with the date on it.
That's a start.
I might only get that far.
This conversation reminds us that leadership isn't just about policy or position. It's about people, purpose, and the quiet power of grace. The Grace Effect doesn't just tell his story, it challenges all of us to reflect on our own. As the landscape around diversity continues to shift, Michael's message is a grounding one. True impact comes from consistent values driven action. If you enjoyed our conversation today, grab your copy of The Grace Effect from Brooklyn to Boise on Amazon. And if you haven't already listened to Michael's previous visit to the podcast, check it out in the link below. Thank you so much for listening.